Hello, I'm Christina with The Turned Leg. I love to salvage, repurpose, and create and help others to do the same. Today we are talking brushes. It really doesn't matter what type of brush you use with DIY paint. You don't have to get all fancy, but the brush really does make the difference. And it's important that you know the difference between this brush and this brush and this brush and this brush and what they're used for. I hope I can answer all your questions about brushes, but if I don't and you still have a question or two, make sure to comment down below. Also, if you are a brush expert and have a few tips to share with everybody else, please put those in the comments below so we can help one another. When I first started painting furniture, probably about 8 years ago with a totally different brand than DIY paint, this was my favorite brush. This is a Purdy brush. You can get them at your hardware store. I loved the angle. This was like the brush I used. In fact, I kind of keep them. In case I run out of brushes, I'm using these still every once in a while when all my other brushes are dirty. So this is where I started. I will tell you though, brushes really make the difference. You can use a foam brush. You can use a Purdy brush. This is the standard size paintbrush that most people use to start with. These are both number 12. This one is the Paint Pixie. It is an all-natural brush. Notice the shape of these brushes, the angled head. They also hold a ton of paint. So it's really nice whether you're choosing the synthetic. This is DIY's paintbrush. This is the Paint Pixie All Natural. They're both made by Paint Pixie. They hold a ton of paint. You can just put it on your brush and do really long strokes. They're absolutely fabulous. So these are the number 12s. They are usually what most people choose.
My favorite brush is the slightly smaller number 8 from Paint Pixie, also known as the Dream Brush. Because it's a little bit smaller, it is a little bit lighter when filled with paint.
DIY Paint though just came out with a brand new brush. This is a good generic brush. It's a lot lighter than the number 12. If you're used to using like a Purdy or an angle brush, this works great. So those are the basic painting brushes. Getting yourself a number 12 or a number 8, whether it's DIY Paint or Paint Pixie, whether you prefer synthetic, which will wash out a little cleaner, or if you like the natural hairbrush, it's completely up to you. Now, if you are applying a base coat and you have a big flat surface, like a big dresser or a huge table, and you just need to slap down the paint, there are some specialty brushes for that, and they also, some of them do double duty. The uber brush of all time for this is the VIP from the Turquoise Iris from Dion. These are great for canvases too, but they are amazing for just slapping down paint. They also can do great blending. The VIP is amazing. It is a big brush. It is a big investment, but boy, does it save you time. The backup, which I think like if you want a blending brush, my recommendation is probably starting out a little bit more reasonable with the Dusty, which is made by Paint Pixie, and it is all natural, or the DIY blending brush, which is synthetic. These are pretty much identical except for what they're made of. And these brushes are great for getting on a lot of paint quickly. They're also amazing for blending. I didn't believe it until I tried, but I was a poor blender of DIY paint. I saw all these amazing women, they could just grab their brush and they could just like, it magically went together and was beautiful, and I could not get it until I got one of these. Both of these brushes have smaller versions. DIY Paint has the sampler, and the Dusty has the little baby little D. Now what's great about these is they fit inside the sample size jars of DIY paint. There are small brushes that are good. Obviously, dollar store, you can get craft brushes, you can get chip brushes. These are my probably top two. This is the French tip from Paint Pixie, and then this is the DIY paint called the Insider, which is the equivalent. They're sister brushes, both made in Italy. One is natural, one is synthetic. And then there is a tinier one called the Little Frenchie. So we have the French tip from Paint Pixie and the tinier Little Frenchie. These are just great. What's nice about the shape of these brushes is they really get in all the grooves. And you don't have to worry. I know with bigger brushes, you're always like swirling to get down into the details. These, if you just paint over it, it's amazing how it gets in all the cracks and crevices. So you can apply wax with anything. You can use a chip brush. You can use a dollar store brush. You can use cloth. And a lot of times, just like an old rag that's kind of lint free, an old t-shirt, or I use a lot of times old washcloths, those work really well for applying wax. But brushes are really nice because they can hold a lot of wax and they can really get into the grooves a little bit better than just applying it with a cloth. DIY Paint and Paint Pixie both make wax brushes. These are the long-handled, pretty much traditional wax brushes that most people start out with. I know I start out with something similar. What is different from these two brushes and is the bristles are smooth. If you've used other brands, I mean, you can move them around. They bend. If you've used other brands, usually their wax brushes are really stiff. And it will kill your arm to do the waxing because usually the wax is stiff, not DIY. It's really smooth and creamy. So these are your standard wax brushes when you're applying. What I've really gotten into using is my stencil brush, my JRV stencil brush. I use it for waxing. Why? Because it'll fit in the palm of your hand. Also, if you're working on a bookcase or something, you can get in and not worry about this big long handle. So it can go almost anywhere. These little stencil brushes, they're double duty. Absolutely wonderful. You can get a JRV stencil brush, use it for stenciling, and use it for waxing. These are not your mother's stencil brushes, seriously. These stencil brushes, if you've stenciled before and it hasn't worked, these brushes are just golden. So many more bristles and hairs. They're a lot like stiffer because there's so many packed into a small space. These are like those cheapy stencil brushes that you used to get years ago, and it's really bendable. These are not as pliable. They really hold the paint and they group together, so when you're stenciling, you're gonna get a lot less bleed through. You can use these for stenciling. You can also use these for waxing. Different colored wax, detail waxing. So the stencil brushes really have dual purpose. If you are doing a lot of furniture and you want to buff quickly, because you know buffing with a cloth is going to take a lot of arm power and a lot of work to get the shine that you want. You always buff the next day when you're buffing your wax. A really good investment is a good buffing brush. This is the ultimate one. This is the Paint Pixie buff brush, and obviously because of its size, it kind of reminds me of the shoe polishing brushes. Because of its size, it buffs extremely quick and all those great bristles, and it can just make your piece of furniture come to life very quickly with very little effort. This also comes in a smaller size called the Buffy. So this is the Buff, the smaller is the Buffy. They save you a ton of time and energy too. If you have detail work to do, we talked about, of course, those little tiny Frenchies and the French tip and the Insiders. These are great for detail, but sometimes even this is too big. Dionne Woods from the Turquoise Iris has come out with her line of artistic brushes, and they are amazing. They are such high quality. And of course, they say the Turquoise Iris on it. This is her cheerleader brush that I have, and it's just wonderful. This is the edge brush, and it even has a little like plastic holder up here to protect the brush. This is the edge. It has a nice angle to it. So these are all the Turquoise Iris brushes that I carry, and this is the Boss. And this is so great for painting like picture frames, just going really quick. It really gives you a nice finish. I wanted to share with you how I wash my brushes and what I use. Dawn dish soap, the blue one. I don't know what it is, but the blue one works really, really well. I highly recommend using Dawn dish soap on your brushes. I also have a pretty soft scrub brush that I will use with Dawn dish soap on my brushes. Paint Pixie also has an amazing charcoal soap that comes in this little bag. They're only $11, and it's soap and scrubber in one. So when you're gonna get this wet, and then it'll suds up, and then all you do is you're gonna rub it onto your brush a little bit. You'll then put that away, work it into your brush, and rinse it clean. DIY Paint has a brush cleaner. Also, it's a little bit more expensive because it comes in this container, and when you open it up, inside is charcoal soap. It also has like a little grate over it, a metal grate. And so when you open it up, you're gonna do the same thing that you do with the suds brush. You can take your brush, you're just going to kind of get a little water on it, get some soap and suds, and then do your rinsing, rinse it clean. But what's nice about this is then you can kind of seal up the mess, and it'll dry and be ready for you on your next use.
To purchase any of the brushes you saw me using in today's episode, you can shop my online store at shoptheturnedleg.com, or you can visit my booth at Plaza Antiques and Collectibles Mall in Lincoln Park, Michigan.
Having the right brush will really make a difference with your final project. Hopefully now you have a little bit more information about all these brushes and what they're used for. What is your favorite brush? Comment down below, I'd love to hear. Before you go, make sure to hit the like button, and if you want to see a new video every week, click the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching.